This is 9/11 Freefall.
Episode of 9/11 Freefall. I am the host, Andy Steele. I don't have a guest tonight. It's just me. We're going to be talking about some of the latest news related to AE 9/11 Truth and its mission. I'm going to be going over some more questions from the webinar series, stuff that we can't get to during the webinars because they're not related to the technical aspects of the controlled demolitions that we witnessed in New York on September 11th. And I'm going to be going over some latest developments in world news. I consider it world news, and I consider it very relatable to AE 9/11 Truth and its mission. Hence why I'm bringing it up here. So I'm going to be getting to that in just a few moments. Stay tuned.
The views expressed on this show by guests and the host on issues outside of the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence are the opinions of those individuals alone and do not necessarily reflect those of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth.
All right, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. So the big news this week, at least it's giant news to me, is that Muhammad Ali, boxing legend, heavyweight champion of the world, like something like 3 times, has passed away. Passed away last weekend, I heard, and it's a real great tragedy, especially for me, because I, as a kid, was really into boxing. I don't know why. It was just, well, I know exactly why. It was actually what it was I was raised around. My father had all these boxing magazines set up in this one room. I remember them. They were from the 30s and 40s and 50s because he had been really into boxing as a kid and as an adult, too. And so we used to watch the fights together. We used to go to them in Utica back when they had more boxing events taking place there. And part of my childhood, a big piece of it, I remember, is going through those boxing magazines and reading about all of the greats back in the day, back before the heavyweight boxing title had been broken up into all these little pieces and all these different federations existed, back when you had one recognized heavyweight boxing champion. Now, today, I guess there's periods where you have a recognized champion, but there's also periods where there's like several of them, and it's very confusing, hard to keep track of, not worth keeping track of in some instances, a lot of corruption taking place. But back in the day, it was you knew who the heavyweight champion of the world was. And so I used to read about all of these people, Joe Louis, Rocky Marciano. I could actually list all of the heavyweight boxing champions of the world in order. This is actually my first written publication. My first book was a little book I put together, the heavyweight champions from John L. Sullivan to Mike Tyson. He was the big guy on the block when I was young, and I had drawn little pictures of them. They weren't very good pictures. It wasn't a very well-written book. There wasn't much information in it, just their date of birth and their date of death and when they were champion. But I think that was a pretty good little research project for a 6 or 7-year-old. So yeah, there you go. And Muhammad Ali passing away kind of brings me back to that time. It also brings me back to a time when I was researching him for a project. I think this was like in 4th grade. You had to write a biography about somebody famous. And there was this book. It was a biography of Muhammad Ali that I used to take out religiously from the school library. And something that really stuck out to me was the political stuff, beyond the boxing, beyond what he did in the ring, the stuff that he stood for in life. As many people must know or should know, if you don't know, you should know it, he lost his title. He was stripped of his title because he refused to be drafted. He refused to go to the military and fight in the Vietnam War. Went against his principles. And he paid an ultimate sacrifice for that. Ultimate sacrifice, of course, being his title, the coveted prize of his profession. And I've been looking back at that now in the past hours preparing for this podcast, just to see what he said about that. It's one thing to look at something when you're a kid, and another thing to look at it when you're an adult, because you'll see it from different eyes, and you can more put yourself in that person's shoes as an adult, realizing exactly what it is they're giving up, and realizing that even though you're looking back at it in history and it was the right thing to do, those people during that time period don't necessarily always know if it's the right thing to do. They don't know if they're making the right choice or not, always. And what gets me about Muhammad Ali is it seemed like there was no doubt in his mind that he was making the right choice. And I think this is very applicable to our current mission, what the mission of this show is, of AE 9/11 Truth, because so many times I talk to professionals, people who know that what Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth talks about, what it exists for, the fact that those buildings in New York were brought down and controlled demolitions on that day. If you're new to this show and you don't realize this, you listen to archives. I brought on expert after expert. You can go to YouTube and type in 9/11 explosive evidence, experts speak out. You can go to ae911truth.org and download a free PDF of Beyond Misinformation, What Science Says About the Destruction of Towers 1, 2, and 7 of the World Trade Center. And all the evidence is laid out there. So go ahead and do your research. You'll see what it shows you. But there's a lot of people out there in those professions who are awake to this. They know about it, but they're afraid. I've had people propose questions to me. If I sign the petition, will I lose my job, or will this cost me work? Foreign people who are engineers or architects afraid that they won't be allowed into the United States if they sign the petition. Now, I think some of this is unjustified fear. I think some of it is people being overly paranoid. I don't think completely paranoid. I mean, it does exist, but I don't believe in letting fear guide you, and neither did Muhammad Ali. But what got me about this is just watching his speeches and talking about his decision not to go into the Vietnam War and lose his title, and there were some other ramifications too. He wasn't allowed to go travel to other countries. As a result, the U.S. restricted his travel access. He also cost him money, obviously. I saw an interview in which he was talking about the fact that he was relying on college speaking tours in order to keep his head above water, and he was living from tour to tour, or not tour to tour, but lecture to lecture. He was lecturing at various colleges, so he'd get a certain amount of money for doing one lecture, and then by the time that money ran out, he'd have another one pop up. So that's not a very comfortable existence, trying to maintain your lifestyle from one event to another. It is very, very comfortable to have a steady paycheck, folks. So and I'm sure anybody out there who has been alive in the adult world realizes that. So there's a lot he had to take into consideration when he made this decision. But when I listen to him talk, I don't see any waver in his face. His voice is very confident. His eyes are very bold and solid in their power. And I don't think he regretted it one bit. Just from my own interpretation of his body language, and he was ready to go ahead and lose that title. And I think this really exemplifies what I've tried to push on this show, an attitude I've tried to push. I've said it in previous episodes. There's so many people worried about losing some kind of prestige, some kind of man-made title. Think about these broadcasters that you watch on the television, people who have worked very hard so that they could be considered a news director at so-and-so network, or that they could be the face of some program that you see on the TV, maybe some program that airs on, Fox News at a particular time every single day. I don't even know who most of those people are. I don't even watch television very much. I know some of the big people like Bill O'Reilly, Sean Hannity. But a lot of those big people are big people from like several years ago. I haven't watched much network television the past year. I think when I went down to visit my family in Arizona, I watched some television and caught up with what was going on in the presidential race, but I've lost touch with a lot of that, folks. But there's people, those kinds of people still exist, and in this system that keeps this lie perpetuated, the lie of 9/11, the phony official story of what happened to the buildings in New York, it relies on those kinds of people, those ambitious people willing to go along in order to keep their man-made title. And that's all it is. It's a man-made title. Even President of the United States is just a man-made title. It's something that we all observe and we respect it. And there's been a lot of energy and money put into sanctifying that title and protecting the individual who's given that title and providing him with the authority to issue an order and have lots of people do what he says. But when you really boil it down, it's just a man-made title. It's something that we invented, humans created out of their own imagination. So, as is the case with lots of things. I mean, you can listen to philosophers on the internet talk about the fact that borders are man-made creations, that there really doesn't exist any countries in this world. They're all just fictions we invent for a purpose. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have any use and that they shouldn't be protected and enforced and laws and all of that. We're not getting into those issues here on this show. So that's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying that at its reality, on a philosophical level, when you really boil it down, a lot of these things that we refer to don't actually exist. They only exist in our collective imagination, as do titles. And the title that I began talking about was Heavyweight Champion of the World. At one point, there was a person, I guess there still is in some respect, there's a person that is recognized as being the best boxer. And that's something that these people who choose that career covet. They want. They want that fame, their recognition. They want the money that comes with that because of that fame and recognition. And Ali walked away from it because in his mind, not going to war, not killing for the sake of someone else's agenda was the right thing to do. I personally happen to agree with him. So I consider that heroic. So I want to actually credit Muhammad Ali for opening me up at a young age to this kind of thinking, the kind of thought path that would lead me to realizing later on that the buildings in New York were a controlled demolition and I need to start writing articles about it and working with 9/11 Truth and hosting a podcast and talk to you right now. I want to credit him for doing that because initially it was my interest in boxing that led me to reading the book about him and learning about his Vietnam War stance as a consequence of that. So I think this guy is a hero, and I think that because I've seen people post memes on Facebook saying that he's not a hero, he's just a great boxer. And in some respects, I mean, there are some people that get held up as heroes, famous athletes, and then something happens to them, they pass away, they get held up as heroes, and I would agree with those sentiments, but with Muhammad Ali, I do think he's a hero because he was willing to walk away from something that is a fiction of the establishment to what he knows is real, a very real stance. And folks, really, titles don't matter. Titles do not matter. I could declare myself the president of the room that I am sitting in right now. And I do own this room that I'm in, and therefore I am the president of it, but that doesn't really mean anything. It means nothing. It's just a title I create. I'm the exalted emperor of this room, but what does that mean in the big scheme of the world? It is nothing. It has no power, it has no weight to it. It's just something I created. Now, some titles we have in the real world do have more weight to them because society has agreed to recognize this shared fiction for necessary purposes in many cases. But we got to remember that in the end, the right thing to do is still the right thing to do. But that's not just in terms of standing up against injustice. It's also in the pursuit of justice as well. So what do I mean by that? Because I was talking about Muhammad Ali standing up against the Vietnam War, refusing to let himself be drafted to go into the military and giving up his title. But also, too, in the fight itself. I think the most important thing that we have to remember is that nothing happens without us making it happen. And for something to be made to happen, you have to do something very simple. You have to simply do it. You have to simply make action. You simply have to provide that resistance against the machine, create that friction that keeps the people that are keeping the official story suppressed. Not the official story, or rather the truth suppressed, I should say. People who are keeping the science, the information that AE 9/11 Truth talks about all the time on this show, during the weekly webinars, in the movies, when Richard Gage goes on tour and talks. He's just wrapped up another tour in the Southeast, showing the movie Firefighters and Architects movie that we've talked about here on this show. All right, the people who have kept this scientific information from being discussed in any kind of quote-unquote mainstream forum. When we're fighting in this battle, the main thing to do is to create the resistance to them and to simply do some kind of action. And I guess what I'm saying is that it is more important to do the work than to simply talk about doing the work, to create a title for yourself. And there's groups that do this. I mean, there's in various issues, activist groups, various topics, whatever they be, whether they be 9/11 Truth or something else, where it becomes more about the organization and perpetuating the organization among the people who are like-minded, rather than going out and doing the necessary outreach that needs to be done if you're going to have any kind of success with the issue whatsoever. All right, I mean, appointing somebody as a president of a group that isn't really practicing any kind of outreach is really only going to result in everybody staying in the same stasis, the same stalled cryogenic freeze, as a society, and keeping that issue relegated to the few people that are awake to it. So that's why I always liked superhero comics, because those are people who didn't worry about appointing themselves as president or grand poobah of this or that group. They just put on a suit and went out and did it. And nobody even knew they were the ones doing it. I always liked that aspect of comic books and superhero stories. I think that's what we need to be in the activist world. I don't care what you call yourself. I care about what you actually go out and do. And sometimes we don't know what to do. Sometimes we have no clue how to start off. It's like looking at the ocean and being expected to bail it out one bucket at a time. Obviously, you would think that was crazy. You would walk away. So I think the important thing to do is to set small goals, beginning with. Instead of looking at the idea of I'm going to go ahead and wake up every single congressman, or I'm going to wake up every single American and have this big structure that's going to be met involving hundreds of thousands of people. You can't start off with that kind of thought. I mean, it's a good ambition, but you can't wait until you have hundreds of thousands of people under you to decide you're going to go ahead and do something. Start out by going out in front of your local store or into your local park or some local event and hand out brochures. Come up with ideas for contacting the radio. I mean, look what we did with C-SPAN. I know I talk about this a lot, but it's a sign of success. It's a example. It's calling in every day, letting them know this issue exists, that the people, their audience, is interested in it, and it yields fruit simply by doing something very simple. I mean, everything is very simple. So many people are turned off because they think that they can't handle doing real work. They can't handle some task, right? They think, oh, I don't know much about keeping Excel spreadsheets. Which, folks, Excel spreadsheets in this modern day is an important tool for doing activism. They'll say, I don't know how to do that. I was never trained on that. Well, folks, you're in the age of the internet, all right? It is the greatest information age that history has ever known. All right, if there is something you don't know about, I guarantee you somebody has made a YouTube video telling you how to do it. Usually they're about 10 minutes long. Take the 10 minutes and watch it. What else are you doing in those 10 minutes? Take the 10 minutes to learn how to do it. Most of these things that exist in our society are made so that human beings can do them. In fact, all of the things that exist in our society are made so that human beings can do them. Now, obviously, things like brain surgery need to be deferred to the experts. You know, you need to go to school for years and years and years to learn how to do something like that. But these simple things that outreach requires, spreadsheets, how to do graphic art, how to make a web page, how to write a good letter to somebody. There are examples of it on the internet that you can look up and mimic and do it yourself and get better at it as you go along. You got to be willing to make the mistakes and get better at it. All right, that's the only way you'll learn. So there is no excuse when it comes to what we do. Again, I'm not talking about brain surgery. I'm talking about letting people know about the controlled demolition evidence for the buildings in New York on September 11th. Giving people the Beyond Misinformation booklet. There is no excuse. It's very easy. If you want to do something, you can learn how to do it, and we've given you the tools to do it. We have the DVDs. If you don't want to purchase the DVDs because you don't have the money to actually get the hard DVD in your hand, you can get the YouTube of the DVD. I mean, these movies are cloned all over the place on YouTube. All you got to do, if you want to get an MP4 of it, is take the link, Control-C, then go to keepvid.com, Control-V, paste it in the little box that comes up, and then it'll give you a bunch of download options. I would pick the highest quality one. I forgot what that number is, but you'll be able to figure that out by looking at it. Highest quality one, MP4. It'll save an MP4 to your hard drive, and then you take a flash drive and you save it to the flash drive. And that way, let's say that you are going to somewhere. Let's say I had a volunteer at 8911 Truth who was going to Chile, and she wanted a copy of the Spanish version of Blueprint for Truth, where I think it was the guy speaking over Richard, that kind of translation. So you see Richard Gage, but there's a very booming Spanish voice speaking over him. And, you know, it's obviously not his voice. I love watching those. But anyway, so I downloaded that simply by Control-C on the web address, keepvid.com, Control-V into the box that comes up, download MP4, and then I uploaded it to my SendSpace and sent it to her. She saved it to a flash drive and was able to show it to people in Chile without having to look it up on an internet or have an internet connection. Very simple. How did I figure that out? Years of trial and error, researching, screwing around on the internet, finding it. I used to do a show on YouTube. I won't say the name of it because it's kind of embarrassing and very raw, very, very bad. I was new, you know. But again, you can't be afraid of making mistakes, doing new things. But I wanted to have a background behind me on a green screen. All right, I had a green screen. I went to Best Buy, and they sold a computer program that you could do this with, allegedly. And it came with a little folded green screen that you can hang up behind you. It cost me $40. And I had trouble with this program, but then I found out you could do it through Microsoft Movie Maker. So really, I paid $40 for the darn green screen. And I figured it out. I learned it from some kid on the internet. Some kid doing a YouTube video. Was showing you how to incorporate images on the green screen behind you. All right, and yeah, there was some mistakes. On one of the videos, it looked like my hair was sparkling. It was some weird, some kind of cosmic effect going on unintentionally. It was something about the way my hair was going up against the image behind me. It looked like I was like some kind of sparkle bright character or whatever. It's funny. It's funny. It's not a tragedy. So this is how you learn. This is how you do things, and it's a lot of fun to learn. I love learning new stuff. I learn all the stuff about quantum physics in my spare time. All right, but this is how you learn things. I'm going to make instructional videos on how to do Excel spreadsheets. This is very necessary because you can reach out to a lot of people through email if you got their emails in a spreadsheet. Very simple. And again, I am no genius. I don't know if you listen to me. I don't think I'm low intelligence, but I don't think I'm Einstein. And speaking of Einstein, we've got a meme up here on Facebook, on AE 911 Truth's Facebook page. I wanted to talk about this. It's posted on June 6th, and it's got a bunch of barmaids on it, beautiful women, so it catches my attention. And it says, it should be possible to explain the laws of physics to a barmaid, Albert Einstein. And it really captures the essence of why this issue is so easy to grasp, even for people that don't understand or don't have a full master's degree level understanding of physics. First of all, watching Building 7 come down on video, most people who are intellectually honest will agree that there's something wrong with that. Even if they're not ready to commit to it being a controlled demolition yet, they will say it looks like a controlled demolition. And I don't care what side of the argument you are on, if you say that it doesn't at least look like a controlled demolition, then you are lying to yourself. Because at the very least, it looks like one. Suspiciously looks like one. So right there you can get people's attention. When you explain free fall to them, free fall is not a difficult concept. All right? Free fall, all you have to do is take something and drop it. Richard Gage did this when he was on C-SPAN's Washington Journal. He took a pen and dropped it. I think somebody made a GIF of him doing that. It was pretty clever. It was cute. And that's how you explain free fall. And you explain that NIST admitted free fall for at least 105 feet. That's 8 stories. So get these facts embedded in your brain and say this to people. So that means that this building met no resistance for those 8 stories. That is impossible. That is absolutely impossible unless you have explosives helping it along. All right. Without explosives, there would have to be some kind of resistance at each of these floors. So these are simple scientific concepts, and I don't want to disparage barmaids by pointing out this quote from Albert Einstein. We got it up on the Facebook page. I mean, there's a lot of very intelligent barmaids that I've spoken to. So it's not to disparage the profession, but simply just to point out this idea that anybody can grasp this if you simply talk to them about it. All right, the cover-up is that lousy. You can talk about physics too regarding the Twin Towers, the lack of deceleration of the top blocks as they hit the lower portion. All right, it doesn't matter how big the top portion is. In this case, it wasn't big; it was a lot smaller. But regardless, as the top part of a building hits the lower part, it's still going to slow down, unless you have something else removing the structure below at the same time. Which we did in this case because it was a controlled demolition. All right, but this has been documented by Tony Zambodi in the Missing Jolt paper. He talks about how he analyzed this with the physics software. Now, you can check his work. If you've got a problem with that, then criticize his work, not the people. All right, but these are simple concepts that anybody can get. So there is no reason, if you care about this issue and you want to be involved, to wait. There is no reason to sit around and say, well, we got to wait for the best strategy before we can start doing something. We'll start doing something now, and then if you come up with a strategy later, that's fine. But the best strategy is just to talk, to educate others. You can't wait for that magical moment when you happen to be in a restaurant and the waiter asks if the congressman can share a table with you, and you just happen to have a copy of Beyond Misinformation in front of you, and then you hand it to him, and then he decides to read it because he's trapped in a car in traffic in his limo for 2 hours. I mean, you can't wait for all these magical circumstances, all of these universal cogs and gears to start turning to work in your favor. Even if you believe in some cosmic entity that oversees us and thinks our work is good and helps us along. You know, they say that God helps those who help themselves. So you got to help yourself, right, to make something happen. And then hopefully maybe the winds blow in the right direction in your favor. Who knows? I don't know what's waiting for me beyond. Don't worry about it too much. I'll find out later. But you've got to do the work. For lack of a silver bullet strategy, you simply have to do the work. That's the best thing to do. Get talking. Nobody does anything they'd rather not do unless they're afraid of something else. In the case of these large institutions and governmental bodies that we're always trying to do outreach to, right, their fear is that they lose their base, that their audience turns against them, that their constituents become more knowledgeable on a topic and concerned on a topic than they are. So if you can't get at that head, then you can bite away at their ankles and their legs and then their torsos, and eventually you get to the head. And then you never know what kind of person you're going to wake up, or you never know who's going to show courage, like Muhammad Ali did when he refused to go to the war in Vietnam or refused to go into the military. And he gave up that title. Don't worry about titles. Don't worry about rising up or being in a certain position. You don't need a lot, folks, to affect change. All you got to do is have that ambition. I mean, a janitor who's got a lot of will and a lot of a good work ethic can affect a lot. Believe me, I know this. I've seen it. You don't have to be in some high position. You don't have to be governor. Actually, in some cases, those high positions make you weaker. And we are in this for work. We are in this for doing the efforts, the necessary outreach efforts. At least that's why I'm in it. I'm not in this movement to sit there and commiserate about the buildings in New York being a controlled demolition. I'm not looking for group therapy and dealing with the reality. I'm looking to do something about it, move on and retire and not think about this again. That would be great. I swear, if they admitted that it was a controlled demolition by, at 8 o'clock in the morning, and assuming that everything else fell into place and we got into who did it and found out the truth, by noon I'd be done. I'd post one more message, maybe one more free fall to look back, and we'd be over. The end. That would be a great day, and I think that day is coming. And that's how you have to look at it, too. I've been watching this stuff on quantum physics when I go to bed at night, and man, it's so fascinating. They talk about these hypothetical dimensions. You know, we got the first dimension, which is just a line, and then you got the 2 dimensions, which is a line going up and a line going side to side, and you got 3 dimensions where you stand up out of the paper, which is the world that we live in. And then they talk about the 4th dimension potentially being time, where it's like all of time existing at once. And this gets into some deep philosophical stuff, and no, I'm not turning into some New Age hippie on you, but it is fascinating. And so I like to use that as a personal fiction to imagine a day that they acknowledge the controlled demolitions of the buildings in New York has already existing. It already exists. We just got to figure out how to find it. It's like something that exists in this room that I'm sitting in right now. It's lost. It's like something that's been misplaced. Do you ever have that happen where you're like, I can't find that hat I really like? Where is it? I know I got it. I know I didn't give it to the Salvation Army. I know that I didn't throw it away. It's somewhere in here. And depending on how badly you need it, you go ahead and you look for it. Even if the room is really messy, you go ahead and you look for it. Sometimes need to find it is heightened based on what it is. Let's say you need to go to an important appointment and you lose your car keys. All right, suddenly your desperation and your willingness to work for it gets heightened. You get more ambition. You start rooting around for things. You start messing up the room even more, throwing things up in the air until you find those car keys because you got to get out of the house. You got to get to that appointment. Well, I want us to look at that the same way. Our 9/11 truth the same way. Our goals the same way. That great day when they acknowledged the controlled demolitions of the buildings. All right, think of that as the car keys. We got an appointment we need to get to. These car keys exist. We need to root around and dig through the papers and throw the dirty clothes up into the air and find this with reckless abandon. But I want you to imagine it as already existing, whether all that stuff is true or not. It's a good personal fiction to hold on to as you move forward. A way to imagine this that I think gives hope, because anything that happens manifests in our mind first. You know, we're architects and engineers for 9/11 truth, right? Well, architects and engineers, they design buildings. The structural engineers design the buildings. The architects are the ones who first conceive it. But for these tall buildings that we look at here in the city of San Francisco, up there in New York City, I look at them, I get vertigo. But they are impressive. These buildings that tower over everybody begin as a thought in somebody's mind. Without that initial spark, that initial thought, they wouldn't exist. Nothing would exist. So our mind has great power, great potential. And so if we believe something can happen, then everything starts falling into place. We start doing the necessary actions to make it happen. And even if you don't necessarily think that that's all it takes, that you need some luck too and you need some willingness from others, doing nothing isn't going to get you closer to that. All right, at least doing something gives you a higher probability of it happening. So again, doing something creates a higher probability than doing nothing. So you might as well at least try to do something. And look at what's happening now with AE 9/11 Truth. We got an update here. It says yesterday at 12:08 p.m. I'm recording this on Wednesday, so this was on Sunday this got posted. But it says AE 9/11 Truth had 8 architects in attendance at the 30-person firm of McMillan, Pasden Smith in Spartanburg, South Carolina, to listen to the World Trade Center 7 presentation, Richard Gage, AIA, at our noon lunch and learn today that included host and AIA chapter president Jess Stafford. 5 were architects, including 2 additional AIAs, and were completely unaware of the third tower that came down on 9/11. All 5 agreed that the evidence for controlled demolition is overwhelming and that we need a new investigation. So there you go, folks. It's like in this one firm. I don't really know much about this firm. But Richard Gage, one group of people at a time. And in this case, he's not talking to people that are already awakened and commiserating about the fact that it's a controlled demolition. He's talking to people who had no idea that this building existed, people that we want to target, AIAs, architects, people who could sign the petition at some point. That's the way to go about doing it. I'm not saying it's that people shouldn't get together and talk and know each other and be friends and share notes and strategize with each other. But it can't just be limited to that. I mean, we're not forming a fraternal organization here. We're conducting an outreach battle, a campaign. The goal is to not exist someday because we won. That's the way it needs to be handled. That's the way we need to look at it. So, I wanted to make sure that I went over a few things here on this show. There were some good questions that came up during these webinars. I said that I would talk about it on the show, and whenever these questions come in during the webinars that we can't really address during them because they don't have anything to do with the scientific evidence, I want to make sure that some of them get reviewed, and then in these cases when I don't have a guest here on this program, it's a good opportunity to go over them. And it's also a good opportunity for me to work in some housekeeping news, too, when they come up. And so the first way to do that is address this first question. It says, is this the most constructive way? You do know that the material present is dry and boring to most people and over the head of others. You got to branch out to some jazzier issues. Best of luck. So I don't think this person had any mean spirit in writing this. I think this is just their review. That's fine. First of all, the over the head of others, I don't think basic physics is over the head of other people. I read that quote that was posted in a meme on AE 9/11 Truth's Facebook page. It says, it should be possible to explain the law of physics to a barmaid. That's Albert Einstein. All right, and it is possible, and we do it, and there's a lot of people waking up to this. I didn't tell you that I've run into people out just in my normal business. The person at the cell phone store. I had to get a new cell phone because the one I had digital buttons. I got this weird condition. It's called zombie finger, where my finger is not recognized by touch screens by a lot of them. I don't know. Maybe it means I don't have a soul or something. But I had to get a new phone that's actually got hard buttons to push. I know I'm taking a big retroactive leap backwards here. I don't care. This is awesome. I totally dig my new phone. But anyway, the guy asked me what I do for a living. I just kind of casually mentioned it. And he was already awake to all this. His whole demeanor with me changed. I had to call the gas company over something. And the guy came, and somehow it came out. He might have seen some DVDs laying around. And it came out what I do. And his whole demeanor changed. He was waking up to this. I gave him a free DVD. I mean, outreach happens and when you least expect it. In this case, it's dealing with the gas company guy at 2 in the morning. But you can talk to people that are not physicists or structural engineers or architects, and they get it. More and more people are getting it every day. So I don't agree with that sentiment that it goes over most people's heads. It only goes over their heads if they don't want to deal with it. I've heard people say, I don't know, stuff's beyond me. But it's not because it's really beyond them. It's because they don't want to think about it. They want to focus on their garden or canning their preserves or whatever. Maybe they figure they're too old. They can't do anything about it anyway. In some cases, certain family members, whatever. All right, but it really doesn't go over anybody's heads. It's just something people say because they don't want to deal with it. All right, now, is this the most constructive way? I believe it is, even if it does get dry and boring sometimes. Look, one of the things that I've struggled with here on this show is, should I be getting into bigger and more exciting issues? Problem with that is that, and I've seen this happen with alternative media, is that when you're trying to focus on roping people in with something that's jazzy and sexy and is like the big talk of the news at the current moment, is that it becomes about drawing people in with that. It becomes all about that. So in some cases, and I won't mention news sites or particular people or groups, you see sometimes stuff gets exaggerated. I won't say fabricated, but you'll see more meaning put into something like that a politician said than that person probably intended. You get these sensational headlines, and people get excited, and it draws people in, but it's really no different than what the corporate media does in some instances. You know, but they've got their own agenda, and the alternative media's agenda, I think, is pure, but it's still not completely pure. And I don't want to get off into paths, especially when it comes to talking about stuff that is not related to AE 9/11 Truth and its mission. I mean, we've done it a little bit on this show. We've had other aspects of 9/11 talked about sometimes, and I'll do that every once in a while. But overall, I do not want us to lose focus, even if it means that the general public doesn't necessarily want to hear this or that architect talking about the same evidence. It's just a different architect this time. I'm hoping that at some point they can look at these 4 years of shows they've been doing pretty much every single week. There's been a few reruns recently because other things are going on. Other work I've had to get done that that week. A lot of good work. We have a lot of work here at AE. But I'm hoping that people in charge, whoever they may be, or whoever is going to be that big opening for us, that big breakthrough person, will look at the 4 years worth of different interviews and say, wow, look at all these people. Yeah, they're essentially talking about the same subject, but there's so many of them talking about it, and look at all the stuff that they are doing, that I'm willing to risk losing those people that are just interested in whatever the sexy issue of the week is. Because I'm trying to get activists. I'm trying to get people that are actually interested in this issue, who are mature, focused, willing to actually do work. And the person that just kind of floats from one issue to the next and gets caught up in whatever the latest hysteria is not necessarily someone that's going to stay focused and be willing to do what is necessary for this issue, this 9/11 truth issue, the controlled demolition evidence, the science of the building destructions. All right, so I can sort of let that go. I don't exist as a show, and those webinars don't exist to try to draw in ratings or please sponsors and sell gold or some survival kit or something like this that you see advertised on these alternative media shows. And I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that's not what we do. That's not the focus. I don't have a show because I want to have a show. If we solved 9/11 tomorrow, I probably wouldn't do a show anymore. Or, I don't know what I would do. But that's not why I'm doing this right now. And so I'm willing to let some of that go. If I could get 15 people who are really dedicated to listen to this program and say, yeah, that's something that we should be passionate about, and I want to help and volunteer and do whatever is necessary, even if it's boring stuff, I would rather take that than 1,000 people that just sort of want to listen to the news and get excited about whatever the latest act of tyranny is in the world. Because that's not what our aim is. This is focused towards this issue and activism surrounding it. So, yeah, I understand there are jazzier issues, but to me, this is the jazziest issue. Even though it's 15 years old, the fact that they brought those buildings down in front of everybody on that morning and then lied about it is the jazziest issue in U.S. history. I haven't forgotten about it. Just because other things have happened since then doesn't mean that this still isn't the most important issue. So I'm still going to keep on doing what I'm doing. We are going to get a new webpage, though, and I am slowly working on that. And I am going to have the shows available on SoundCloud to download as well. So greater stuff is coming for this program. It's just a little bit of work to get it done. But we're still working at that. Next question. What are you going to do to get the 28 redacted pages revealed? Well, we're not doing anything for that because we're AE 9/11 Truth. Our main issue is the controlled demolitions of the buildings in New York, not the 28 pages. We have used that as a springboard to talk about Building 7 when Senator Rand Paul introduced the Transparency for the Victims and Survivors Act of 2015. We used that and said, yeah, we do stand shoulder to shoulder with the spirit of that legislation. And now, since we're talking about transparency for the families, let's talk about transparency when it comes to Building 7. And we had a whole bunch of points listed regarding Building 7 that we want the government to reinvestigate or be more transparent on. One of them was like the input data. Why are they keeping this input data? Excuse me. Why are they keeping this input data secret? What could they possibly need to keep from the public to protect public safety on this building that no longer exists? What are they afraid? That some terrorists are going to find out that you can set a building on fire and bring it down in 7 seconds? According to the official story, that's what they say can happen. I know it's preposterous. It's ridiculous. I know that if I called a controlled demolition company and said I could save them tons of money simply by starting some random fires and watching the building come down, they would laugh me out of the place or laugh me off the phone. I know that's what would happen. But if we want to swallow NIST's official story, that's what we're led to believe. But I don't know what keeping the input data secret on Building 7 protects the public on when it comes to that story. An official story makes us less safe because that means that buildings can just suddenly fall because of random fires in 7 seconds. So if they're right with the official story, we actually need that input data release, the architectural and engineering community. We need that in order to figure out how to keep this from ever happening again. How to fight those evil fire-setting terrorists that are just going to start a random fire somewhere and bring the building down. Right? So we've talked about that with relation to the 28 pages, but again, that's an unrelated issue to AE 9/11 Truth. I mean, it's about 9/11, and indeed, I agree. It'd be a total what the heck moment in U.S. history if it gets revealed that the Saudi Arabians had anything to do with 9/11, given the Bush family's ties to them. But again, we have to stick to the science. Has Beyond Misunderstanding, this person's got the title wrong, but that's okay. Has the book been sent to engineering, physics, and architectural departments of American universities like MIT or Caltech? Yes. We sent the booklet out to the 25 top engineering and architectural schools in the country, according to this list. I know this because I'm the one who headed that project. And that was a daunting task, getting the names of the faculty members and all their addresses and office information and all that stuff onto a spreadsheet in the way that the mailing company wanted it. So I know this did happen. What the reaction is, I'm not sure. We sent it out to tons and tons of people. We sent it out to AIA chapter leaders. We sent it out to ASCE members. That was like 28 hours of no sleep. Seriously, listen to Johnny Cash while he did it. But yeah, getting all those names on there. We sent it to the professors, like I just said. We sent it to media people, people at C-SPAN got a copy of the book. People at, I believe, Al Jazeera. I'm not exactly sure. My memory's hazy, but I think they got it. I'm just throwing out random news agencies that I can remember. Amy Goodman, Democracy Now!, because everybody is so focused on the idea that we got to get Amy Goodman to agree with us. So that did go out to them. But this is the kind of stuff that needs to happen, and it's a great idea, and I think that there is going to be more follow-up done with these universities. But I like the way this person is thinking, all right? Instead of, do we need to wake up this one person, or what can we do to get Noam Chomsky to agree with us? They're focusing on the entire university there, the other people at MIT. That we can get to wake up, who may not be as famous, but may be able to lend their name to the petition, and doing that kind of wide outreach. And think about this, folks, especially, even if you're doing it electronically, if you do outreach to 100 people, and it might take, it might take, let's say, 5 minutes or 10 minutes if you're doing it kind of slow, to reach 100 people through an email and send them a PDF of the booklet, right? And let's say only 2 of them read the booklet. Well, you still reach 2 people in 10 minutes, all right? That's pretty good. I mean, if you were out there doing that in the real world and knocking on doors, I guarantee you wouldn't be able to find 100 people in 10 minutes. But if you got 2 of them in 10 minutes to read it, that's pretty good stuff. So there's a lot of things the electronic age can help us do. We just got to be willing to do some of the work involved with it. We're actually not being asked to do a whole heck of a lot, considering that mass movements involved getting arrested and beaten up in the past, and sometimes even killed. Doing a spreadsheet is really not that big of a deal. Learning how to do Microsoft Excel is not that big of a deal. We're actually very lucky in this movement. So there is so much going on, and I guess because we're getting towards the end of the show, actually it's just a few minutes left, I just want to leave you with this thought. I've been watching these things in quantum physics. It's just a personal interest of mine, and reflecting on the death of Muhammad Ali, and it's just, this world is so vast and so interesting that there really is no reason to do anything other than tell the truth and do the right thing. Because ultimately, in the end, we are left only with ourselves. I mean, we form partnerships with people. We may even get married. But ultimately, we're born alone. We die alone. We have to live with ourselves in the very end. And it doesn't really matter what the world thinks when you really lay it all out. All that matters is what we think about ourselves. And what our own personal interests are. I mean, I've learned this as I get older, too. I care less and less as each year passes about what the world thinks and care more and more about what I think, even with personal interests. Some of them I even consider them a little juvenile. I don't care. I don't have to justify it to anybody. If I want to play Warcraft at the end of the day, after getting my work done, instead of going out and driving around in a fancy car. I do have a pretty cool car, though. It's a convertible PT Cruiser from 2006. I love it. I love convertibles, especially when I go visit family in Arizona. But I didn't buy it because it's like the latest, greatest model. It's just cool to have a convertible and go through the desert with the top down. That's what life is all about. That's what the important thing is being able to just have those cool moments with yourself or with people that you really care about, right? So when you realize the truth that that's all that really matters in life, then worrying because some guy from Popular Mechanics looks down on you from his scripted television box, what he's saying on TV, really doesn't matter. Being called a conspiracy theorist by somebody who doesn't even know the official story they're defending really doesn't matter. All that matters is that you did the right thing and did what you could to try to speak up for those people that died on that day. And that you did something. Even if you think it's small. There's no small acts, just small people. Because the small acts culminate to a big act when you put them all together. A million small things done well every day is what wins wars for us. In this case, it's an information war. So you just got to keep on trying and doing whatever you can and remember what's really important in life, like Muhammad Ali did. So I have him to thank for setting me on this path as a young person. And hopefully, if somebody listens to this podcast and they're a young person and looks into it more, they can be set on that path too. And I would consider that a good accomplishment on my part, even if I don't even know about it when I pass from this world. So that's what I'm living for. All right, this program's on every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific, and you can keep up with the archives by going to 911freefall.com. We're going to get a new webpage at some point. It'll be the same address, but it'll look a lot different. So keep an eye out for that. But I want to thank you for listening and have a great night and good luck.